What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. And if I'm going to have this platform, and I'm gracious for the platform, and I wouldn't have it if it wasn't for you guys, I think it's best that we use it to try and wean out frauds that are trying to get elected into our Congress. And one of those frauds is a former Capitol Police officer named Harry Dunn. Harry Dunn is trying to run for Congress. Do not elect this fraud into our nation's capital. This man is a liar. He is a fraud. He is the exact worst person that we need in our Congress. We need to get people like him out of our government. You know, it was actually, I was watching a video of Thomas Sowell, maybe a long time ago. And one of the things that Thomas Sowell said that actually stuck out to me was, and it actually affected the way that I look at politics a lot. And it's followed me for a very long time. Thomas Sowell once said, and I'm paraphrasing, of course, is that the people that should be in politics, like the regular patriotic Americans, the people that should be in politics aren't. And the people that shouldn't be in politics are. So essentially, we have the exact worst people inside our Congress. This is why our system is broken. People like Harry Dunn getting elected into our Congress through fraudulent means. He is a fraud. He is a liar. He is a fraud. And as long as I have this platform, for now, for as long as I do, I'm going to call these people out. Former officer Harry Dunn is a fraud, and I think the entire world should know. He got potentially innocent people locked up in prison for decades, for 8 to 12 years, because of a lie that he said to the American people. And what's worse is his lie started to fall apart. And there was another officer that they called onto the stand, David Lazarus. And he just testified to Harry Dunn's lie by saying that he witnessed the Oath Keepers harassing Harry Dunn when David Lazarus was in a building a quarter-mile away. And how do we know this? Because there's time-stamped footage that was released not that long ago, time-stamped footage from J6 that shows David Lazarus couldn't have witnessed the Oath Keepers harassing Harry Dunn because David Lazarus was in a building a quarter-mile away. But yet David Lazarus got on the stand and he testified to Harry Dunn's claim that the Oath Keepers were harassing him. And so therefore the Oath Keepers are now sitting in prison for 12 years, some of them 8 years. But nonetheless, they wouldn't be if not for this officer, David Lazarus, coming up and lying on behalf of Harry Dunn so that they can continue this cover-up that J6 was an insurrection when it was not an insurrection. And now this fraudster, Harry Dunn, who without the help of his buddy lying for him, should be charged with perjury. But at the very least, at least these potentially innocent people wouldn't be sitting in prison. And now this guy is running for our Congress. Like I said, exactly the wrong people at exactly the wrong time. And the only reason why he's running from Congress is because the Democrat that's currently in that seat is resigning or he's leaving. And so Harry Dunn sees this as an opportunity to better his career, to further himself on the backs of Americans, innocent, patriotic Americans that went there to go protest their government. Harry Dunn is riding on the backs of those people in order to better his career so that he can get inside the halls of Congress and get that nice, cushy government job because the Capitol Police position he was holding for so long just may not be cutting it. It may not be paying the bills as much as he would like, but he sees a real future here, so he's going to take advantage of it. And I'm sure there's pollsters and I'm sure there's donors and special interests that are riding on the back of Harry Dunn as well. This is a broken system that we have, and Harry Dunn is one of those people that are breaking it. So before we go on, I want to go in and get into the details of this story. And we actually talked about this not that long ago, but this was a story that broke on Glenn Beck's show by an investigative reporter, Steve Baker. And so this is the start of the article. So I got the article here, Glenn Beck, hat tip to, this came out October 4th, 2023, and it says, Pelosi's head of security likely perjured himself with a January 6th lie. And this is a Blaze Media exclusive, and it says, how much of the January 6th evidence that our justice system used to convict Americans has been a lie? Very good question. I wish we could actually get answers for this, but we can't. Why? Because it's in 100% cover-up mode by the people that created the lie. People like Harry Dunn, people like David Lazarus. Now, are they in on the false flag operation? I don't think so. I think they're merely lying to A, cover their ass, and in Harry Dunn's case, to further their careers. And so this is why we're going to call them out, because they should not be in our Congress. And in all reality, people like Harry Dunn, and especially David Lazarus, being how he is caught and there is proof of him lying under oath, should be in jail. These people should be in prison for lying under oath, right? They should not be getting rewarded with positions as Congress members. God, man. So investigative reporter Steve Baker has done a year-long deep dive into the CCTV footage and real facts of January 6 and has released his first report with Blaze Media. Baker joins Glenn to reveal the evidence that former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's head of security, U.S. Capitol Police Special Agent David Lazarus, gave false testimony about his whereabouts during a key encounter with members of the Oath Keepers. If this false testimony led to the imprisonment of Americans, what else have we been lied to about? Totally agree. And this is the transcript. I have the transcript right here, and I actually do have the video of Steve Baker explaining this footage. It's about an 8-minute YouTube video that I will post in my podcast description so you guys can look at it and watch it for yourself and see exactly what he's talking about. It is a slam dunk case of perjury, folks. It is time-stamped footage of David Lazarus a quarter mile away from where he said that he witnessed something he didn't actually witness because he was a quarter mile away. And so there's no denying this. But yet David Lazarus he's free. He's free, and because he lied under oath, innocent Americans, potentially innocent Americans, the Oath Keepers are sitting in prison. This stuff infuriates me. It is disgusting, and these are the exact type of people we need to rid our government from. We got to get rid of these people, folks. They must not be anywhere near any type of authoritative position. They should be like in the streets somewhere. And then it goes down. It says, something happened in the trial. First thing that morning, when the lead prosecuting attorney, Jeffrey Nessler, assistant U.S. attorney, approached the lectern and the bench and said to Judge I don't know if that's how you spell it, Mehta, M-E-H-T-A. It doesn't matter. Said to Judge Mehta, we have a problem, he said. We have a rogue attorney that is about to release some FBI 302s. These are interviews of one of the characters in this story that we released this morning. And that if he does, that these are sealed documents that are not publicly available, and we can't have that. And Judge Mehta did something that I've never seen before. And I don't know anyone in the media room where I was sitting in had ever seen this before either. He actually directed the media pool to put out a tweet and threatened this particular attorney and let him know that if he released these sealed documents, we would have him held in contempt of court. And right then I went, what are in those documents? And Glenn said, so what was in those documents? And here is Steve replying, he says, they're still sealed. But I will tell you, the documents themselves were actually the FBI interviews of one of these Capitol Police officers. And the primary problem that the government has with those documents is that the testimony was changed. His testimony about his interaction with the Oath Keepers, which in the first testimony he revealed to be a positive interaction, that the Oath Keepers were lined up between him and the more agitated protesters and assisted him in keeping them off of him and helping him de-escalate. That was in May of 21, that interview. In August of 21, this officer was brought back in and the testimony was changed into an aggravated, contentious event with the Oath Keepers, and as well as the creation of a second event to explain the first FBI interview that never happened. This is insane, folks. And so Harry Dunn first gets on the stand and he testifies saying, yes, the Oath Keepers created a phalanx. They created a line to protect me or to seal me off from the other agitated protesters. That was his first testimony. And then he comes back in August, right? Back in August of 21 and says, no, it completely changes the narrative and says that the Oath Keepers that he initially said were protecting him were now very angry and very violent. This is insane, man. So you have to ask yourself, be like, well, how is that possible? How can this guy testify one point and then come back and testify about a completely different thing? You would have to, and all you have to do is just look back on his first testimony, right? Well, how are you going to do that when they sealed the first testimony? And not only did they seal the first testimony, but the judge said that if these documents are unsealed by this reporter, that the reporter would be held in contempt. This is insane stuff. Like, this is the type of stuff we're watching happen to Americans all across the country who are being wrapped up into this J6 narrative that January 6th was this insurrection, when it was not an insurrection. I am sorry, folks, but if January 6th was an insurrection, then you wouldn't need all these shenanigans. You wouldn't have to use all these desperate attempts to lie, to seal up documents, to change testimony. You wouldn't have to do any of that. People would just be able to look at it and say, yes, that seemed like an insurrection. And not only that, but you shouldn't have to change testimony. You shouldn't have to seal documents of testimony that was said before that's now changed after. This is just one scenario. We are starting to see this happen over and over and over again. We have a 100% cover-up. We have a operation which was, to me, is starting to look like a 100% complete false flag operation conducted by the government. So the January 6th was a false flag operation, and now the Democrats and the entire, I wouldn't say the entire, but certain judges, prosecutors, attorney generals, all these people are in this 100% cover-up mode now. They have to get all these convictions of seditious conspiracy so that they can essentially push the narrative further that J6 was an insurrection. And so they are willing to sacrifice potentially innocent Americans and send Americans away for decades in order for them to uphold this narrative that J6 was an insurrection. This is what we're watching happen. I'm just reading you the transcripts of the investigative reporter, Steve Baker. I want to see that first testimony from Harry Dunn. But this is the most shocking part of all. The reason why I wanted to get on here and make this show, to make this segment, was that Harry Dunn, the officer that changed his testimony, is now running for Congress in Washington, D.C. Do not let this fraud win this election. This fraud, Harry Dunn, should be nowhere near the Washington, D.C. Capitol. He should be on the streets somewhere in the Midwest. This man should be as far away from any type of authoritative position as possible. These are dirty cops, folks. You know, the so much for the defund the police movement, right? Where are the defund the police crowds? These people want to defund community police, but they don't want to defund the federal police. What we're watching unfold from our Capitol Police officers, people like former Officer Harry Dunn and David Lazarus, is disgusting. It is the stuff nightmares are made of. It is the stuff that absolutely destroys countries. You have dirty cops. Now I ask you, was Harry Dunn, was he bribed with this position for Congress in order to change his testimony? I want to know this. Put Harry Dunn's ass back on the stand and question his ass again. Why did your testimony change from the first time to the second time? And you want to know what's even crazier is after he changed his testimony, and Oath Keepers defense attorneys used this, saying, "Hey, he testified this time and said this, and now he's saying the complete opposite." Well, and his story was starting to fall apart. Harry Dunn's story was starting to fall apart. And so in order for them to back up his story, they brought in this other agent, Special Agent David Lazarus, to come in and say, oh yeah, I witnessed the Oath Keepers being aggressive towards Harry Dunn. And boom, right there, that's what sealed the fate of the Oath Keepers. But then when you go back and you look into the CCTV footage that just was released recently, with this latest batch that was just released, it shows in the time-stamped video footage that David Lazarus couldn't have witnessed the Oath Keepers harassing Harry Dunn because David Lazarus was in a Senate building a quarter mile away at that exact time. At the same time, Harry Dunn said he was having the encounter with the Oath Keepers. This is disgusting. It's a lie. They're lying under oath. These Capitol Police officers are frauds. Harry Dunn is a fraud, and he should not be elected to Congress, and everybody should know about it. So I want to go in more to what Steve Baker said. He says, because this is perjury and somebody set this up, and we're working on that trail as well. Good. He says, but going back to Lazarus, so he emerges and comes back into camera frames on the Capitol TVs with absolute proof of the exact time, down to the second of when he emerged back in the camera. He even passes under an analog clock in the subway at exactly this moment. And it's at 2:48 p.m. when he finally reaches the other side of the tunnels from the Senate office buildings. And when that happens, the Oath Keeper Officer Dunn encounter is almost already over by then. He's nowhere near it, and he still has a long way to go. And then we're able to triangulate because he will go out of camera frame for a while, and then he'll enter camera frame again from another camera. And then he's down another hall, and then he enters another hallway. Then he goes up on the Senate side. Then by the time he reaches the bottom of the stairs that lead up to the rotunda, and it's in a little area variously called the mini rotunda or the speaker's lobby, when he reaches the bottom of those stairs, it's now 2:56 p.m. And the Oath Keepers are long gone. So there you go. So essentially, there's video proof that David Lazarus, by the time he showed up to where Harry Dunn said he showed up, the Oath Keepers were already done and gone. The encounter was not even an encounter anymore. So these officers are lying under oath, ladies and gentlemen. Put their asses back on the stand immediately. This is why, and listen, I'm not the only one to say this. There has been many podcasters and radio hosts, conservative radio hosts that have said this. The Republicans on day one should have started their own J6 committee, because now the J6 select committee that Nancy Pelosi set up, this is what everything is being run on. This is what's being used to remove Donald Trump from the ballot. This is what's being used to convict and persecute Americans that went to go petition their government that day. These protesters are being locked away in prison all across the country. They're being locked away inside a D.C. gulag because of the J6 committee report. And what did Republicans do? Nothing. They did absolutely nothing. And only now, when there's, 8 months left of a Republican House, you have Loudermilk, one senator, and a handful of staffers that are going back and trying to retrieve all this evidence that we now know was being destroyed. It's destroyed. Nancy Pelosi, the J6 committee, destroyed evidence that they were obligated to protect. And yet they sent some to the NARA archives that's now impossible to get back. How that even happened, I don't know. You have a terabyte of video depositions that are missing that nobody can find. It is so mind-blowing that this guy, Harry Dunn, is trying to run for Congress. Listen to this. This is from ABC News. Obviously, left-wing Pravda. Former Capitol Police Officer Harry Dunn, who took on J6 rioters, discusses congressional run. He says, quote, "I thought, what better way to continue my mission of public service." This guy is a freaking fraud. He is a gigantic freak of nature. When you see this guy, he looks like Frankenstein, so you can't miss him. He is a oath. Do not let this man win Congress. Do not let this man anywhere near our Congress. So earlier this month, Dunn announced he was running on the Democratic ticket for Maryland's 3rd Congressional District after the incumbent, Representative John Sarbanes, announced he is not seeking re-election. So that was my fault. So Harry Dunn is actually running for Maryland's 3rd Congressional District. We cannot allow a fraud, a lying fraud like Harry Dunn inside our Congress. These are the exact type of people we need as far away from our government as possible. This guy should never see the light of public service again.